What's up? Welcome to the courtroom.
I am Theo.
And I'm Oj. And in this podcast, we tell you stories about people's life, liberty, and property.
Kikwentuhan namin kayo about court rulings in a way that will make you understand jurisprudence like a 9-year-old.
All persons before the Honorable Supreme Court of the shall give their attention, for the court shall inspect.
So join us as we delve into true crime, political controversies, and all things started and chismis every week. In 1984, members of the Workers' Party of Kurdistan, also known as PKK, called for the establishment of an independent Kurdish state within Turkey. By doing so, they initiated an armed struggle against Turkish security forces.
This conflict would continue to grow through the mid-90s and had claimed 4,036 civilian lives by 1997.
17 years old pa lang si Sukran Aydin ng mga panahong ito. At isang araw, may grupo ng mga village guards and gendarme ang dumating sa kanilang bayan.
Ang gendarme ay mga armadong police officers sa France and other French-speaking countries. Now, 4 members of the gendarme group came to Sukran's home and questioned her family about recent visits of PKK members to their house.
After being subjected to threats and insults, parasahang pinaalis si Sukran at ang kanyang pamilya sa kanilang bahay at dinala sila sa village square kung saan nandun din yung ibang detained villagers. Pagdating nila doon, Sukran, her father, and her sister-in-law were blindfolded and driven sa Derrick Gendarmerie headquarters.
Nahiwalay si Sukran sa kanyang family and sa loob ng mahigit 3 days, Sukran was severely beaten, stripped, sprayed with cold water from high-pressure jets while being spun in attire.
Di pa doon natapos ang pagpapahirap kay Sukran. She was blindfolded and was taken into an interrogation room where a man in military clothing forcibly removed her clothes and raped her.
Bago siya i-release, Sukran was forced to go back doon sa kwarto kung saan siya ni-rape. And then, she was beaten for an hour by multiple assailants. And pinagbantaan pa siya na wag ire-report yung mga nangyari sa kanya.
When Sukran returned to her village, she immediately went to the office of the public prosecutor to report what happened to her. The public prosecutor sent Sukran to see Dr. Dennis Akus to determine whether Sukran was a virgin and document the presence of any marks of physical violence or injury.
It was stated that Sukran's hymen had been torn and merong widespread bruising around her thighs. Kaso nga lang, di daw ma-establish ni Dr. Akus kung kailan napunit yung hymen ni Sukran since wala siyang prior experience in examining rape survivors.
Following this examination, the public prosecutor sent Sukran to 2 other medical examinations by separate doctors, requesting that they determined if and when she had lost her virginity.
During the launch of investigation, Sukran and her family were subject to continual harassment and intimidation to withdraw their complaints.
Now, in accordance to public international law, the European Convention on Human Rights and Fundamental Freedom, aka ECHR, there are set law prohibition of torture under Article 3 and right to an effective remedy under Article 13.
Tama. Kaya naman ang tanong, meron bang violation na nagawa with regards these 2 provisions?
The court ruled in the affirmative, Oj. Meron daw violations of Article 3 on the prohibitions of torture and Article 13 on the rights to an effective remedy in accordance to ECHR or the European Convention on Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. This is because the court recognized both the intention and the gravity of the Turkish officials' action against Sukran while she was detained.
Kasi nga, ang torture, unlike inhuman or degrading treatment, is a category of human rights violation na nakakwalify by the intention of the perpetrator and the intensity of suffering inflicted.
The court reasoned that Sukran's arrest could only be explained daw by the existence of conflict in the region, as well as the need of the Turkish security forces to gain information. Therefore, the treatment that Sukran suffered in detention would also be seen as a design to serve the same purpose.
Considering also Sukran's age, sex, and circumstances under which she was held, yung accumulation of these deliberate acts against Sukran were particularly terrifying, humiliating, and it kept her in a constant state of physical pain and mental anguish, di ba tayo?
Tama. Sa kasong to, the court acknowledged the rape of a detainee as an especially grave and abhorrent form of ill treatment, noting how easy it is for the perpetrator to exploit the vulnerability and weakened resistance of a target.
Nire-recognize din ng court yung physical and emotional suffering, pati na din yung lasting psychological trauma sa part ng biktima.
The International Court concluded na sa gantong sitwasyon, the physical and mental violence inflicted on Sukran, especially the act of rape, amounts to torture under Article 3 of ECHR.
Given the absolute nature of the right not to be tortured under the international law and the particular vulnerability these tortured survivors suffer, any complaint or violation related to this right requires states to promptly initiate a thorough and effective investigation into the act committed.
Yun nga, sabi pa nga ng court, the public prosecution should have acted immediately to investigate Sukran and her family's complaint daw. Dapat daw din nagkaroon ng thorough and effective investigation into the allegation of rape. And Sukran is a survivor should have been examined by independent medical professionals with competence in those areas.
This is because when a woman or girl reports rape or sexual violence, the appropriate investigation, including medical legal reports, should abide by international standards. However, in this case, Sukran Aydin underwent several virginity tests as a method of investigating the crimes committed against her.
Kaso nga 'di ba, the international human rights law and medical experts have all agreed that the so-called virginity testing is of no scientific value, and in fact discriminatory and in itself violates the rule against torture, inhuman and degrading treatment.
Kaya nga, at di lang yon, Teo, the use of virginity test is also violative of the requirement under international human rights law that addresses gender discrimination. It's provided in Article 5A of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women.
Yung rationale why virginity test is frowned upon is because the concept of virginity promotes an idea that women or girls should be valued according to whether they had penetrative sexual contact. In fact, by subjecting a woman or a girl to a virginity test against her will is in itself nga daw a violation of the right not to be tortured.
Ang dapat daw na ginawa ng state in the course of the investigation should have been to collect evidence relating to the complaint, including an evaluation of the claimant's psychological and emotional well-being, as well as documentation of her injuries and yung view ng experienced medical practitioner as to whether all this indicates that she had been raped.
Kaso nga lang, yung public prosecutor in this case only focused his request for medical examination ascertaining Sukran's loss of virginity. Kaya naman, overall, the public prosecutor did not look for supporting evidence at the headquarters and maintain a deferential attitude towards the security forces.
So, because Sukran's complaint was not thoroughly or effectively investigated with due regard for the gravity of the crime she suffered, it can be reasoned that there was a lack of evidence regarding her treatment in detention.
And this lack of evidence would undermine the effectiveness of any other remedies that may have been otherwise available to Sukran had the public prosecutor and medical examiners handled her complaints adequately.
And because the public prosecutor plays a central role in remedies as a whole, this failure amounted to a violation of Sukran's rights under Article 13 of the ECHR, for which Turkey could be held responsible.
So in the end, the court noted that the rape of a 17-year-old detainee who had also been subjected to other forms of physical and mental suffering by an official of the state is an especially grave and abhorrent form of ill treatment amounting to torture.
And the failure of the authorities to conduct an effective investigation into Sukran's alleged suffering while in detention resulted in her being denied access to a court to seek compensation. If you guys like this audiogram, please listen to the full episode on Spotify or on your favorite podcast app, where you can hear our insights on this case. Again, this is Oj
And Theo, leaving you with a reminder to always look back in history because precedent shall rule the future.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again in the courtroom.
Bye!